Welcome back, everyone, to the Burnout Club. This is a place where we dissect burnout and success one experiment and expert at a time. I'm your host, Patrice Bonfilio, and today I am joined by the lovely Elana Margulies Snyderman. Thank you for joining us, Elana.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Great. And for the audience, we were actually introduced by a past guest, Rishi, who was talking all about innovation. But your area of expertise is actually different. You're a director at EisnerAmper. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again, Patrice. I'm really excited to be here. I am a director in the marketing group at EisnerAmper, and in my seat, I actually host 2 of my own podcasts. So it's definitely a little bit new and exciting being on the other side of the table to be the interviewee as opposed to interviewer. And my 2 podcasts, one is called Engaging Alternatives, where I interview alternative investment managers on their outlook for their specific investment strategy. And it ranges from hedge funds, venture capital, private equity, real estate, and other alternative investments. And then I have a private equity deal book podcast as well, where that goes more into the weeds on private equity deal making, M&A, and transactions. And in addition to hosting the podcast, I also help write and edit content for EisnerAmper across various industries and service lines, and then also help with business development as well. And the podcasts have proven a great business development tool for EisnerAmper. And for those of you who are not familiar with EisnerAmper, we're the #1 alternative to the Big 4 accounting firms, where we provide audit, tax, advisory, and outsourcing to various industries and service lines. And our financial practices group is one of the biggest industry groups at the firm.
Yeah, and to be fair, I used EisnerAmper in different capacities over the years, so yeah, I can speak highly of you.
Thank you.
And you, by your description, sound incredibly busy. Is that accurate?
Yeah, pretty much. That's accurate, since, as you can appreciate, being a podcast host, it's not just the final product that people see. There's so much that goes into it, from, finding the right guests to interview you and being strategic about that, to coming up with the questions and the topic, to the prep call, to the recording, and sometimes guests ask to redo the recording, which I'm fine doing because we want them to be happy, to editing the transcript, to our design team and production team at EisnerAmper editing, and also designing the graphic for the cover page, and then the web team having to do all the back-end stuff to make sure it goes live on the website, to putting in all the major podcast channels. So podcasting can definitely be a full-time job.
Yeah, I can see how that can happen. Thank God for the team that edits my podcast, because I would have made 1 episode and that was it, if that was the case.
Yeah, I'm grateful as well for my team who does all the editing and back-end stuff as well, because I wouldn't know how to do that. So.
Yeah. So what is your favorite part of being on the receiving end of all of that content? It sounds really interesting. I've listened to a few episodes of yours, and you're getting great insight into people that are paid a great deal to invest on behalf of others. So what is it like receiving all of that information and snippets?
Yeah, Patrice, it's a great question that you asked me. What I enjoy most is the inspiration I get from people, how they started their journey. And there is no one-size-fits-all approach. Of course, there's the traditional finance people who graduated from the Ivy Leagues, went on to get their MBA, went on to get trained at one of the investment banks to where they are today. Then I've met a lot of people who've had very different careers who somehow ended up in finance. So I just love hearing their journeys and really inspired by that.
Yeah, I'm one of those in the second bucket, a really winding road to get here. But I imagine that because you're meeting so many people, given the podcasting and your role at EisnerAmper, that you might have an interesting take on networking. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Networking is something that I've been really passionate about throughout my career, and people in our space say that I'm a pretty proactive networker. And I really think it's important to stay in touch with your network and develop relationships. It's not just a one and done type relationship that you develop, but really stay in touch with them. And I'm very blessed and grateful that I've met a lot of great people in the alternative investment industry who I've known a long time. And I believe in paying it forward. And I believe you should always take time to speak to someone, because even if there's no way to do a potential deal or business or transaction with them at the moment, you never know down the road where there might be opportunities. And also it's important, or I think you could always learn something from a preliminary introductory call with someone. So.
Yeah, I'm trying to be more like you. I was very comfortable just staying in my little hole for many, many years, but it's actually been more sort of revitalizing to form connections with people, real connections, not just saying hi at a conference and grabbing a business card. That's really easy to do and easy to forget. And as an introvert, it just feels very draining to me. So I think the more people like you are out there, the better for the industry and just for society, really. It's nice to form deeper connections. So have you always been that way?
Yeah, pretty much. So I'll backtrack to one of my first jobs back in 2006. I worked at Institutional Investor on one of their newsletters called Alternative Investment News. And at the time, I didn't know anything about finance or alternative investments.
Oh, wow.
And my boss at the time, shout out to Nathaniel Baker, he encouraged me to attend various industry conferences. He told me go to California to some conference there and meet people. He told me use this list of alternative investment contacts, call them and ask them to meet for coffee, lunch, or drinks. And as I kept doing that, my network kept expanding. And before I knew it, I had a pretty robust network in the space that, like I said, I'm really blessed and grateful I have.
Yeah. So call to action, everybody, right now or at the end of this podcast. Make one connection, send somebody an invite for coffee or just a quick Zoom or something, but throw a line out there, see what happens. So tell me a little bit about how you handle burnout, either, at past jobs or today. What's some insight that you can give the listeners?
Yeah, I guess I have a couple of outlets, since in our space, both you and I and the alternative investment industry as a whole, burnout is very pervasive. So a couple of ways I specifically handle burnout are through exercise. I love to run. I love to work out. And then also, I know we'll probably dive deeper into this, but over 10 years ago, I co-founded a 501c3 nonprofit, Phyt Cares, and we educate youth and communities through fitness in New York and Puerto Rico, and also support entrepreneurs on the island. And I started that with a partner named Jonas Serrano. So volunteering, philanthropy, giving back is another outlet that I've used to help with burnout and knowing that there's more to life beyond work or beyond a paycheck, and really helping others who are less fortunate.
Yeah. And those are themes I'm hearing again and again from the guests. So I don't think there's a way to get around trying to incorporate your body and being fit. I'm starting to get back on that journey. I haven't been great about it, but yeah, since you brought up Phyt Cares, I'm interested to hear more. I agree that the service aspect is, a gift for giving, like yourself and also the recipients. But, what exactly are you doing in the organization, or what does the organization do?
Yeah, sure. So I am a co-founder. So I will give you the background. So Jonas Serrano, he is CEO of Fit Gym NYC and Fit Gym in Puerto Rico. And he's always trained his gym clients' children. Then in 2013, we had an opportunity to provide fitness for high school students at a high school in the Bronx. And following that, with my background, he asked me to write a press release on this event and see if media could pick it up, and Telemundo, the Spanish language channel, picked it up. And then following that, Jonas got a slew of emails, phone calls, being like, oh, this is such a nice program. Is there something where we could send our kids to like this during the summer? So then Jonas said, well, I'll close the gym twice a week over the summer to give these kids something to do, keep them off the street. And at that same time, we decided to do all the paperwork and incorporate it into a New York registered nonprofit. So we put together a business plan, budget, did all the paperwork with the help of Lawyers Alliance. We got our incorporation done. Then we got our tax exemption status about a year later with the IRS. And over the last decade plus, we've touched the lives of hundreds of participants in New York City and Puerto Rico. And some of the groups that we work with include after-school programs for students from the Bronx, East Harlem. We work with at-risk youth. We work with special needs youth. And in Puerto Rico, we've worked with similar populations. And then during COVID in Puerto Rico, Jonas wanted to enhance our organization's mission because everything was closed. So what we did is he supported and mentored local Puerto Rican young entrepreneurs to help them run and grow their business under Phyt Gym. And we've been very successful at that. And one other thing I want to mention is we're all volunteers. So all the donations go back to the communities we serve.
That's fantastic. It's a great reminder, too, that even if you have a business, there's still a way to kind of morph and give back and start a nonprofit. Is there anything that you look back on and think that you would change or alter, for someone that's listening now and it gives them that spark of an idea like, oh, maybe I should try to do something similar?
That's a good question. With respect to anything I would alter with Phyt Cares, I think we've done a lot. I don't know if this directly answers your question, but we partner with other schools and nonprofits to provide fitness to them complimentary. And we got a lot of no's at the beginning when we reached out to a lot of the big nonprofits in New York. So you'd be like, hey, could we incorporate a fitness program? And we said, we'll put in our end of the, budget or whatever, the cost of the program. And we got we were like, could you guys help at all, given this is for your population? And we got a lot of no's, but that didn't deter us from our mission and moving ahead. And I know this is a powerful theme that we all get in business as well. Like, we all get a lot of no's, and don't let that deter you from doing something that you believe in, and you should still follow your passion.
Yeah, great advice. It's interesting to hear that too, because you wouldn't necessarily assume that if you're trying to provide something and it's a nonprofit that you would get no's. So I'm sure you're saving someone a bit of worry by sharing that. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think also we're a small nonprofit, but a lot of the bigger nonprofits that have employees and payroll and hefty expenses, a lot of them have to get new programs approved through their boards or respective committees, and a lot of them have their structure in place already. So.
Yeah. It's also interesting that you have the connection to Puerto Rico. I've never been there, but I am going with How Women Lead, the group, on a retreat there. And so I'll learn a little bit about some entrepreneurs there and economic engine and a few things. So maybe there's a way for us to kind of partner going forward.
Yeah,
that would be interesting.
That would be great. You're going to have an amazing time in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, I hope so. So why don't we kind of switch gears a little bit and go back to kind of the nitty-gritty of burnout. So I'm interested in polling all of my guests and figuring out, where does the burnout come from? Like, I have a mix. It's like 360 degrees. It's coming from family and caretaking and work and scheduling. It's just everywhere. What about for you? Like, where is your burnout stemming from?
Yeah, I think a lot of times, and I think as women and men too, feel guilty about saying no to a networking event or saying no to plans with friends or family, or it's just saying no. So I think most burnt out when I feel like out every night, whether it's a social thing or a networking event, and I don't feel like I've had that time at home to relax. And then also with business travel as well, because then if you're gone for a week for work, then you don't really have your evenings to relax or for yourself.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I definitely need to recharge, just sit in silence sometimes on my own chair or couch. So what about, let's flip it on the opposite side. What is exciting for you at the moment, or something, it could be in the future too, that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, absolutely. My husband and I like to travel, and I always feel like we need a trip to look forward to, because that's what motivates me personally to get through the heavy workload and all the other obligations I have. We don't have anything specifically planned, but we will plan something over the next few months. So I feel like it's important, and I know popular press says this too, that people need to take a vacation a few times a year. And it doesn't have to be like an extensive 10-day trip. It could even be like a long weekend just to recharge.
I'm a firm believer in that as well. Now, let's talk about past trips. Is there any place that really stuck out to you that you loved the most or found really interesting or different that you could share with the listeners?
Yeah, I think one of our favorite places that my husband and I went to was Lanai in Hawaii. And that's the island that Larry Ellison of Oracle owns. And we were fortunate enough to go in June 2021, so a couple of months after the COVID vaccines. And what stood out to us about that, we stayed in a wellness hotel, and the whole outside looked like paradise. I know paradise is a metaphor, but that's really what we envision for paradise, and just the relaxation we felt when we were there, and everything was on the property, hiking, walking, working out, natural swimming pools, great food. We really felt super relaxed, and especially after not being able to travel during the pandemic, we were extra grateful we were able to do that.
Yeah, there's nothing like that first trip after COVID being locked down. Oh, that I remember that feeling. I haven't actually thought about that for a while, so thank you for bringing back that memory for me. Now, I found it interesting. So you mentioned the hiking element, and I know you run. Is there one particular athletic thing that you're doing that revitalizes you more than others?
I think running, the runner's high, I think that's probably what I enjoy most. And then I do strength training a few times a week too at Fit Gym. And I think that's especially important for women as they get older. So I think I enjoy a mix of both.
I ran track for years in high school, but I don't think I ever experienced the runner's high. I don't know if that's scientifically a problem. But how long do you have to run to feel that? If you're going out?
I don't know if there's a set time. Sometimes if I'm traveling for work and I only have 15, 20 minutes for a quick run on the treadmill, I'll still feel great, whether I do a few sprints on the treadmill in 15 or 20 minutes. Or sometimes if I have time to run outside, even if I just do a 3-mile run, I still feel pretty good for the day.
Yeah. So just proves, find what works for you and then do it. That makes a lot of sense. With your work at EisnerAmper, do you have a preference or something that sparks more interest between the written publication format versus the podcast?
Oh, absolutely. I love the podcast better. And
Oh,
I
really?
started the podcast series during 2020 when private equity fund in California, he asked if I host a podcast series. And I said no, since before COVID, I would do weekly blog interviews with fund managers.
Oh,
And so during COVID, since everyone was pivoting and innovating, I asked the managing partner of financial services at EisnerAmper if I could try a podcast. So he said yes. And the first one I did was a PE firm that invests in health, telehealth. And obviously those sectors were very
yeah.
hot during the pandemic. So that podcast I did in the summer of 2020 was very well received. So then I asked him if I could do another one. The second one was on capital raising in a virtual world, which is also a hot topic during the lockdown. And then I was like, wow, I'm really enjoying this podcasting thing. So then I started monthly. Then I got a lot of demand for guests who wanted to be on my podcast. So then I changed it to every other week. And then now it's weekly. So that's what I love the most, podcasting.
Yeah. And tons of demand, right?
Yeah.
Everyone wants to be heard. That's great.
Well, including you. Excited to interview you for my podcast in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's a great plug. I'm excited to be on. You were saying it's always interesting being on the other side. You know, I used to only ever be the guest, but now I like the mix. It's good. And I had one guest ask me a question one time, and I was like, oh, yeah, that's nice. I like it.
Yeah. And plus, it's good to do something out of your comfort zone. And I know when we spoke, I don't know, or I can't remember, when we had our introductory call, one of the books that really speaks to me, and I still think about every day, is Michael Easter's Comfort Crisis. And
right.
yeah, and a few things that resonate with me is one, go out of your comfort zone, do the hard stuff because you're not going to grow if you stay complacent. Mm-hmm. And another thing which ties back to burnout that I truly believe, and I need to do a better job of this, is embracing boredom, not boredom scrolling on Instagram or LinkedIn or social media or scrolling mindlessly on your phone, but the kind of boredom sitting with yourself and just letting your mind wander. Because in his book, and I believe this too, that's when you really recharge and that's when you get your best ideas, if you embrace boredom.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of trying to embrace boredom before. I never let myself get bored because I was just so busy, and until I had an issue with my knee and had to have surgery, having the ice time after physical therapy where, you know, I didn't have a phone or anything, I'm just sitting in a room alone with ice on my knee. I was forced to just be bored and sit there, and some of my best thoughts came at that time. So
absolutely.
Yeah, that's great advice. So everybody write that down. Do you have any other thoughts for the audience that you'd like to leave them with?
I guess a few takeaways is always try to pay it forward, and no matter how busy everyone is, everyone always has time for a 15-minute introductory call. And then one of the other things, like I really admire how you're a very accomplished woman in the alternative investment industry. You host an amazing podcast. And I think what's important for the audience is, you know, a lot of people talk about like women having other women to empower them and inspire them. But I also think it's important that there are males that also help empower these women too, and also advocate for women as well to move up.
Yeah, that's a great point. And thank you for the kind words too. But yeah, it was someone that I had met at a conference that recommended I speak on a panel for the first time. Like, and, you know, after that, there was no looking back. But yeah, so David Bradley, shout out to you. Yeah. So thank you, Elana. It's been really great. If anyone wants to be on either podcast or connect with you about Phyt Cares, how can they do that?
Yeah, sure. So I am on LinkedIn. You could send me a note on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest way to learn more about EisnerAmper or learn more about Phyt Cares. So
fantastic. So thank you so much for being on the podcast. This was really special, and I look forward to being on yours.
yeah, and thank you again for having me.
Wonderful. Everyone, it's a wrap on another great episode, and please remember to review and like and follow and watch us on YouTube now. We're on YouTube. Bye.